And now, the Crafting Recipes Podcast, presented by Rainboom. Hi, how's it going? Welcome to this episode of Crafting Recipes. My name is Rainboom. I'll be your host for this podcast, which is all about getting to know content creators and things behind their content and what they love most. Today's guest is a good friend of mine in shovel241, and we go into some pretty deep dives of some abstract topics, if you want to call it that, and you'll hear that term all the way throughout this episode. But let me tell you a little something about this. This was actually supposed to be recorded way back in September, and I had recordings ready, but me being the way I was with editing never really got out to it. And so 6 months later plus, here we are finally with another take of it, a little more recent one also. So I'm not going to have to introduce this too much, since there's probably not much to introduce anyway, except just to hope that you enjoy this clip and know where to reach me if you're interested in getting to know more about the podcast, or maybe even becoming a guest on this podcast as well. So without further ado, let's jump into this episode of the Crafting Recipes Podcast. I hope you enjoy it. And now, my special guest for today is none other than somebody who probably at this point doesn't need any introduction, because his presence is just so iconic these days that you can't miss his name.
Stop it.
No, and his voice. There you go. There you go. None other, therefore, than shovel241. Shovel, it's great to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Well, obviously, you and I know this, but maybe to you listening, you may not know this. This is actually not the first attempt that we're trying at recording this.
Still waiting for episode 1.
Episode number, exactly. So here's what ended up happening. And it's funny because knowing now, when I started trying to go back to searching for material to start talking about for today, although we're probably going to borrow some things that I wanted to discuss from last time, I realized that you'd been on other podcasts. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's interesting because now I've got some great source material.
Were we exclusive?
No.
We never had that conversation.
Oh, no, wait a minute. No, hey.
We never had the talk.
There was no contract.
No.
There was no signing. There were no negotiations. No, don't worry. There was no exclusivity. None at all. Unless you were looking for exclusivity.
Okay, if that's how you feel.
Oh, we're going to start this off that way. All right, we're going to go on that kind of note. Huh. But no, it's interesting because of the fact that we did have, I think we had our initial attempts well before, because I think the two podcast episode appearances I know you made were with Flow State and Hellfire Mage. Flow State was, I think, a little more towards September last year, and Hellfire Mage, which relative to the recording of this podcast, was more recent. So you know, it means you've been out there, you've been, I guess, sharing a bit more about yourself out there, which is actually kind of cool, getting to see that for sure.
Yeah. I know that I have a really infrequent upload schedule. So that's kind of a way for, if people are really interested in me, that's just a way for them to receive content from me that is a little bit more candid, because a lot of my stuff nowadays is, it's very formulated. It always has been, but something that's like a little bit more natural and less engineered.
Yeah, and I think more expertly structured, but not overly structured to where you lose some of that candidness and yourself, really, ultimately. Because I think you see a lot more of yourself, or at least me as a watcher of your videos, I see a lot of you in them. And it's not like we're just seeing Shovel, some kind of voice that does these videos, but we're feeling some of your personality that comes into your videos. So I think that's probably
that comes too with just time.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
It comes with time.
Speaking of time, too, believe it or not, I just realized that, if we did this back when we first attempted this, and I think this was back before September of last year, already by that point, some time had flown since the very first video, in terms of first being the one that really popped off on YouTube. Now, I think we're about a year and a few months over that, And interestingly, I know the other video of interest I know for myself is because actually I had the wonderful honor of being able to help voice that video, which was the AI one. And I think that one's coming up on a year now, which is pretty crazy. But I looked on your channel, and I think those are a couple of the bigger videos, if not the biggest ones so far, that are on your channel to date.
Yep. Those are top two. I think that my 200-hour video is on track to beat AI.
Oh, cool. Yeah. No, that should be awesome, actually.
It might overtake that, but like they both did well. I'm happy with the performance of both of them.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's just kind of like, okay, let's see how far it goes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, looking back at the videos ever since that first one and all the ones you've released, whether or not they've gotten that many views, or even whether regardless of analytics, what have been some of your takeaways or reflections on just the past, I guess, year and a bit from all this video work?
Well, overall, I realized that my ambition is starting to outpace my ability. In other words, I always bite off more than I can chew with each video. So like I need to learn how to pace myself a lot more. But then I say that, and every video I'm like, all right, next one's going to be an easy one. And it never is. And I'm not sure what it is in my brain to where like I feel like I have to like really fight for it to get a video out. But that's just the way it is, because the phenomenon that I have experienced is when I push, I am motivated and I can get everything, all of my thoughts come through a lot more clearly. If I try to just like pass it off as an easy video and stuff, I get uninspired, I get burnt out, and it still takes the same amount of time anyways. It's just I'm doing it slower. That's what happened with the most recent video, which was the upgrade video. I was like, okay, this will be easy. I'm going to do it with Grayson. We're going to do 10 builds. They're not going to be too big or anything, and we're just going to get it done in a week, and then I can write it and edit it, and it'll be done in a month. That did not happen. I got like really burnt out in the process of doing it, and then the writing was a struggle, even though I thought that it was going to be really easy. And that video ended up taking 2 months like normal. So this one, I'm just like, all right, I'm going to shoot the moon again, and we'll see how it goes. And we're about, 10 days out from release at this point, and still a lot of work to do. But I definitely felt a lot more motivated on this one, but it was a lot.
I see, but at least having that mindset, because I know I think in one of these episodes when you went to one of these podcasts talking about wanting to work under, knowing that there's that stress, it actually is helpful for you. It's beneficial, right? If I think I have that kind of frame correctly?
Yeah. I think that this is kind of an abstract concept, so bear with me. But I feel like when you're talking motivation, it's going to be different for everyone on what really sparks that. But for me, at least from the past year, I've realized that I like the feeling of digging myself out of a hole. And normally, like that metaphorical hole can be self-inflicted, or it can be inflicted externally by other people or other forces, and then just like trying to overcome something rather than just like going from positive to further positive. I know the way that I frame that in my brain, it just like it really starts sparking that, like, I don't know, stress, if you call it, but like just that last minute flurry rush to go and get something done.
Yeah.
I watched a TED Talk one time, and when you have like a homework assignment that's due and maybe you forgot about it, so like an hour before you just like bolt through it.
Yep.
Kind of that feeling, but over a longer period of time. Like I try to induce that phenomenon.
Interesting. As opposed to just sitting and knowing that, there's all this time, I'll work on it, but not have that sort of sense of urgency to have to get it done, like an impending timeline or deadline is coming up.
I mean, I think that like I have no idea how healthy it is, but when we're talking about like motivation and stuff, if I'm just like trying to just chunk stuff out, I just get like bored. I have to I can chunk stuff out, but I need to like feel like there's something chasing me to really get something done. And that's when I do my best work, is just like inducing that kind of flow.
I see. Well, I mean, discovering that is quite interesting because, I mean, thinking back to your first video, or at least, again, mentioning first video, I'm referring to the one that really popped off. Of course, you've had video as well before that, which were also, of whatever other content they may have contained. But the one where you were stating, I think it was the 12 hours a day for a year in Minecraft, that one, right? Do you think that even at that point, you're already starting to feel that interest in, I think this is the way I want to try to move forward with my content? Or just what do you think about when you think back to that first video and kind of your process back at that time?
Well, I mean, I talk about it all the time, and I feel like I simplify it a lot. And it has like a weird spot in my mind now, because like whenever you look back, it's like always very nostalgic and stuff. But I mean, I was bedridden for a while. I couldn't walk for a long time. I couldn't work, and the only thing I could do was build. And like I was like, all right, I'm doing all of this building in Minecraft, and it's great. It's very artistic and everything, and I feel very fulfilled doing it. And I'm being productive in the game. But how can I turn being productive in the game into being productive in real life? So I was like, well, I gotta find a way to make this work. And then after getting connected with all of you guys and other YouTubers and stuff, I really kind of got the idea of it all. And I was like, all right, I think that this is a lot less luck than I initially thought. Because it's not luck. I mean, it can be, but when you're succeeding in content creation, it is not all luck.
Oh, yeah.
It is strategy.
Absolutely. And then hopefully letting luck play its turn out and hopefully being in your favor. I'm sure that you probably were really satisfied, at least, or sufficiently satisfied when you finished the video and were ready to share it. Do you remember sort of what your anticipation was when that video was about to come out? And if you're thinking, oh, this is going to be the one that's going to do it, or it was say, oh, let's see what the community is going to think, and then all of a sudden finding out that it actually turned out a lot better than you may have thought.
I had an inkling that it would do. I mean, I knew that it was going to do better than all of my other videos previously, because for those who don't know, I had uploaded like, I don't know, 15, 20 time-lapse videos and stuff, and they did all right, but I knew that this video was going to do better than that. I did not think that it was going to do that well, but I wanted to make it so that it could do that well.
I see. Yeah.
So, like, I wasn't completely blindsided by the fact, but it was definitely a fortunate outcome.
I mean, rightfully so, given, I think at that time, because of the way that you presented the video in all the edits and kind of how you put all that information into that, was it? I don't know if it reached 20 minutes yet. I actually can't remember myself, but still, because I know knowing like now your videos are kind of pushing a little on the longer side, which is great. But even then, I think trying to pack all that information into just a 12-minute span and the way that you did it was definitely, I think, almost in some people's terms, almost revolutionary, because of just, it wasn't something that was seen very often. And I think you had a really good knack at being able to put all those elements together into a compelling story with great visual elements and, of course, Minecraft builds, which, I mean, now I think we all know, or most of us know, that actually the editing takes longer than the building or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, it normally does. It depends on how kind of crazy you go with it. I go a little crazy with the edits, but when we're talking about that video in particular, I think most of it comes down to writing, which is something that people don't really think about as much. When we're talking about YouTube videos, they think,
Yeah.
okay, it's the thing you're doing, and then it's the editing on the video. Not the case. You can have a pretty much unedited video, and if the writing is good, it will probably do just as well, maybe even better than a highly edited video. It really just comes down to how can you write to compel the viewer, not like psychological visual tricks to really keep someone's attention. Because most of the time when people are watching a YouTube video, they don't have their undivided attention on it,
Yes.
So they're not always going to be looking at the screen. The thing that calls them back to it is the script, the audio, because they're probably listening to it. So
That's true.
if you have good writing and get people invested, it will pull people back to the screen, and it can keep them there.
That's true. Would explain why sometimes even the most important lectures, obviously outside of Minecraft, could be very easily overlooked because, the information is important, but if it's not presented well or compellingly, then the retention isn't there either. I remember I'm actually in the midst of watching a series of clips now that are actually pretty old. Somebody digitized a tape recording, and it had some physical slides that went with it. But for somebody who is not fully engaged in what's going on, especially if you're not really looking there and just kind of listening to it, you're going to easily tune out because this person's voice is just so monotone. There's nothing happening, no motion. The type of, I guess, the script or whatever they're reading is very dry. There's no real animated kind of timbre to it. I don't know how to describe it really, but it sets itself up in a way that you could put it on the background and it might just be to put you to sleep or something and not actually listen to it to be entertained or to take something out of it.
Maybe it gets views that way.
Could be that potentially. No, it's funny because it's an instructional video, but then again, I think that's the nature of those kinds of videos, right? Because they're not really meant to be high impact presentations that are there to keep you captivated or glued to the screen 24/7. They're there to be functional, and I guess if it happens to be therapeutic, that might be a side effect or entertaining. But I guess now that I think of it, it kind of depends on what the intention of the video is. In your case, though, Shovel, would you say that your intention is to entertain actively or kind of just let the listener take whatever they want to take out of it?
No, absolutely. I'm trying to entertain actively. I think that my videos are they're very high energy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to actively entertain the viewer, any viewer that comes across. And I try to make the assumption that the viewer does not know who I am, so they're not a part of my regular audience. So I try to write everything to where it can be understood with no context. So that's just another approach that I take in order to not discriminate against the people who haven't been watching me or haven't watched all of my other videos.
Yeah. Almost kind of like a television series, right? Where you might have come in midway. Well, certain ones, obviously some you kind of have to start from the beginning. But for those shows that kind of have just a recurring cast of characters and stuff just starts and finishes in the same episode, you probably wouldn't even need to have the beginnings or watch the very first one to get to understand what they're doing in the middle. So somebody who is not familiar with the show would still be able to catch on and probably enjoy it much the same. I think maybe kind of is in that sense where it's that trying to connect with people of all, I guess, familiarities with you as a YouTuber or whatever it might be, content creator, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, right.
Interesting, yeah. Now, from the first video, though, I think the thing I also wanted to lead on, this was actually kind of a random tangent that came up all of a sudden, but what I didn't want to lead to was then the second video that came up, and I know something that sometimes happens is that some people get so engrossed and satisfied with the first thing they release, especially if it pops off very well and does maybe even better than expected, that there might be that fear of trying to maintain that same caliber of energy or that same kind of success or, I guess, replicating it in future releases. And I find that oftentimes the second video or the second piece of something is always the one that is either a test or the one that people will really worry about over, because it will see if they're going to maintain their, I guess, quote unquote popularity, or it might start to wane, and then they'll see that, oh, the first one was the best one, everything else is kind of just there. How did you approach it? Were you somebody who was afraid to start on that second video and kind of wondering,
Absolutely.
how am I going to keep up with this? Yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I don't even know if people who aren't YouTubers can really understand this, but when your first video goes big, like when mine did, I thought that it was a fluke, or that's the voice in your head, right? And like you can kind of logic it out and be like, no, I did this, this, and this, and that's why I did well. If you're good at analyzing scripts and just analytics in general, then you can kind of understand why something did well. Mm-hmm. But understanding why something did well in the past is a lot easier than formulating something new, because every time you're almost testing something until you have like a rhythm and a formula. And that just comes with experience. So I was terrified when I was making that second video. Obviously, that video didn't do as well, but it was still within like that same kind of caliber of, I don't know, popularity.
Oh yeah.
My previous videos, I think that the best one was like at, I don't know, 5,000-10,000 views. And that's a big difference between that and one that's like at, I don't know, 2 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was terrified. That is like, all right, this is my big break, right?
Yeah.
And how can I make sure that I keep it going? Mm-hmm. And I think that the second video kind of suffered a little bit because I was like trying to do too many things, but that experience still taught me so much, and it still impacts my videos to this day.
So almost treating them all like being that second video in a sense, kind of in succession, just as you go from one video to the next, where there's always that looming, I guess, standard that you set for yourself, or some kind of expectation that you set to see if you can then entertain your audience with kind of that same caliber, if not better. I mean, of course, you've had some videos, I'm sure, as we've seen, actually, that obviously have popped off. Maybe it's just because there were some hot topics, or like the AI one also, I was surprised that, and I was actually, well, somewhat not surprised, actually. I was thinking that because it was such a hot topic anyway, that a lot of people were going to want to see how Minecraft and AI would kind of come together. But I guess you come across some diamonds in the rough sometimes, right? Topic-wise. Other times, it might not be as easy to be able to find those hooking or grabbing points to try to get your audience. But I also think, though, too, that a lot of this is part of your story, because I know beyond the first video, you had started implementing something that is, I would probably say, dear to you, which is that world of yours that you created. If you want to let us in, I don't know if you've let us in on it before, but kind of just the background behind getting all that. You're setting the characters, or I guess the different aspects of it.
Sure, yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen the videos before, when I was in college, I wrote a book. It was like a very fantasy Game of Thrones-y, Lord of the Rings-y type thing. And I never published it. I might publish it in the future, but that is not something that I have the time for right now, because I'm not going to release something that I'm not proud of. But my favorite part about writing that was building out the world and all of the lore and all of the nations, different mythical creatures, magic systems, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, maybe I have the skill of building, and I can build really big stuff. So why don't I take a crack at that? And it's kind of hard when you're a creative mode Minecrafter to really have something that's like super gripping, because like in creative mode there's no stakes. You're basically a god.
Yeah.
And so you have to have different ways to make something interesting. And I was like, well, I mean, this world is interesting to me, and obviously people like building, so like but I'm not going to just post building videos because a lot of people aren't going to understand all of the mods and stuff that I use. So when you don't understand something, you're less gripped by it. Mm-hmm. But maybe there's a through line to the audience, something else that is additionally entertaining, and the world was one of them. So I think I've got, I don't know, I do a city every video, or like a little civilization. I think I'm at like 7 or 8 cities now, probably a little over halfway done.
Okay, I see. Yeah. I mean, we should probably put a name to the city too, other than just pointing it to this city, right? Because you did have a name, I just didn't want to butcher it, so I wanted to make sure that you you set the record correctly, to make sure. Or even if it was just a city, I think it was more of just an entire, I don't know if you call it a whole kingdom of sorts, almost, of a series of different regions. Was it? Oh, maybe it was just the whole continent entirely. I think, but that's what
the whole continent. That's called Etheria.
Etheria. There we go. So I did get it right. I just wanted to make sure I wouldn't butcher it to all the poor residents of the continent as well. To say, here goes Rainboom butchering names or something like that. But I know
it was in your script for this one video. You said it right.
That's fair. That's true. You would have come to me and corrected, or somebody surely would have come up and said, Rainboom, that's not how you pronounce that, or something like that. But there are several cities, I guess, within regions that do make up the whole continent of Etheria, and each of those cities is what you mentioned that you've been starting to focus on little by little in your videos, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I don't know. I would like to dive into the lore more, but if I go too dense on stuff, then it's going to be a little too undigestible and also not always relevant to what's happening in the video. So if I just like bludgeon people with 5 minutes of straight uninterrupted lore, people are going to check out. So like it's kind of a balancing act to where I make it palatable and I can still share the details of this world and give it enough depth to have meaning and still keep it entertaining.
So it almost sounds like the key to having a good high energy, high impact sort of video is making sure that you can keep your audience engaged by almost shifting the subplots every once in a while, so they're not listening or watching the same thing over. Of course, obviously, you don't want just random pieces of footage, like it's some kind of a collection of reels or vines or something like that, but you want to make sure they all relate to the central theme of your video, or whatever I guess your main subject is. So would you say that, or how have you tackled it? Because I know you've got the lore there, you've got, of course, some clips of the building process and things where you talk about kind of your thought process, maybe your journey, or what you were doing when you were building. And sometimes you even include other people too. I've noticed, I know ever since Achilles made it into your videos, I think she was one of the first people that did. I can't remember which video it was anymore now, but either way, it was one
Cave
of those.
City.
Yes. And having people coming in and then them also almost being another part of that subplot. So how do you tie it all together, or what have you considered when it comes to having all these come in at once?
It can be a lot sometimes, and the thing that I've kind of learned when you're talking about A story and B stories is switching it up is good. Switching it up to a bunch of different stuff can be very dangerous, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
On the Dirt Hut video especially, I learned this because I had my A story, right, which was me building the thing. It was just a giant dirt hut. That's the A story. But then I also had like 4 B stories in that one, and it was so complex that, I mean, it was so hard to write, and if you were really paying attention, you could probably follow it. But that one sometimes it almost just felt like a mess, writing and editing that video, just because I was trying to do so much. I had the A plot, me building, a B plot of the lore and everything, B plot of Achilles building, and also balancing a sub B plot within there of the lore. And then I had Painter and Waspy doing a survival mode challenge on the map as I'm building it. which is another one. And I'm bouncing between all of these different perspectives, all of these stories. It's hard to keep it straight. I would have definitely simplified it if I, just in hindsight, but hindsight's 2020.
Exactly. But it's always a learning experience too when you sort of look back, especially after a certain amount of time has passed. Like I'm sure that you look back at even previous videos, even to the ones that did pretty well, and you're probably thinking, probably could have, I know I can do this better and this better. And just as ways so you can take them into consideration for future videos. But do you find yourself overly nitpicking at certain things when you do look back at some
Absolutely.
of the other videos? Or do you prefer just to kind of generalize it and just say, I'll take this concept and take this as a learning experience and then kind of walk into the next one with all those things considered? When you look, so yeah, basically, in other words, when you look back at your videos, do you prefer to nitpick at them, or do you just kind of look back and reflect and make it very generic?
Oh, okay. I'll probably make it more generic, I think. Like, obviously, there's no such thing as a perfect video. There is.
Oh, yeah.
Something can always be improved, but everything that I upload, I mean, I have watched a million times before releasing it. And once it's up there, I try my best to, like, not watch them again. Just because, like, sometimes it's just painful to watch again because, like, your standards for quality increase so drastically, just with editing and audio especially, that, like, looking back and listening to some of the quality of those early videos is, like, it's just painful.
I can imagine, yeah. Even the ones where I know we were talking about audio in some cases, and not that it was troublesome already in the beginning, but I know that we've moved on, and even like you and I have both been developing individually and kind of how we approach our audio tactics. Because I know I think I've shared a few things with you because I just took some from when I did stuff with broadcast and whatnot. But I know that I can only imagine. I know some videos where you're looking back and going, "Gee, why does the audio sound like this?" And just the pain listening through that sort of thing and saying, "I wonder how this did so well," but knowing those specific details in your mind. they kind of cloud you from seeing the overall success that other people probably would have seen because they wouldn't think about it. I think once we see it, you can't unsee it pretty much, and it's really hard to remove yourself from that to be able to properly look back at it. Even for me, when I listen back to when I've been doing older episodes with Meg on Game Mode Creative or just other things where I know I can hear myself. Oh, even further back, actually, to my old radio days. Man, I mean, obviously, I was several years younger, but at the same time, it's just so funny now that I think it's long enough where I can now listen to myself and laugh rather than listen to myself and sulk or cringe or whatever, because they were just abysmal. It was night and day. Some of the older things that I've recorded versus things that I do now. Obviously, I'm sure that several years down the road, I'll still be doing that same exercise or look at maybe what we're doing here now and saying, gee, Rainboom, why did you sound like that when you were conversing with Shovel? Or something like that, and I guess our perspective will shift around all that much. So I guess for you probably, you yourself don't normally, I guess, look back at your videos, but what would you say to somebody who's contemplating on if they should use their previous work as a basis for what they're going to do next?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at, really. Like for you and with podcasts and stuff, you can kind of, like, it's probably a different ballpark. If we're talking about just YouTube videos, then there's a lot of ways that you can do it without, like, going back and just, like, completely nitpicking a bunch of stuff. Because for me, if I'm looking back at a video, I'm looking at, like, the broader overarching things, like what made retention go up, what made it go down, what was good about certain parts, and then I can kind of just decipher reasonable conclusions. But I'm not looking at, like, every edit to make sure that it's smooth or listening to the audio quality to make sure it's crisp, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The thing that is most powerful in a video is going to be script, always.
So then I guess a good logical question to follow up then would be, what makes a good script? This might be a pretty packed question, but I'll let you try to unpack it however much or little you want to. You can take a hard pass if you want to.
I won't unpack the entire thing
Oh, no
because
problem.
I feel like that would be really abstract.
Yes.
But I will say, if you are trying to write script for videos, don't make the assumption that everything you write is inherently interesting. You got to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think almost like a caveman. You'd be like, oh, would a caveman find this interesting? Would they understand this? And that's completely different than like the whole title and thumbnail psychology. But if we're talking about just every segment of a script, you're gonna have to kill your darlings at a certain point. There's certain things that you might like, but when you get more experience and you learn a bit more about what goes into a script and what people are on average interested by more, sometimes you're just going to have to gut the script to make the video better.
Oh, fair. Yeah. Yeah. Revisions and things. I'm sure that you probably have certainly gone through several of them. I mean, in terms of content that probably didn't make it to the final cut. Would you say you've got a lot of that stuff that's gone on in your case as well?
Mm-hmm. Normally over half.
Oh, wow.
If we're talking like the full script and everything and all of my concepts and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But like also if we're talking about just like all of the time-lapse footage, there's a lot of stuff that I cut through because it's just not interesting. It's like, oh, he cleaned up interiors today. He didn't like decorate them. He just made sure that there wasn't random stuff. That could take multiple days of the building process, but I don't show it because it's boring. If anything, it might be like a 20-second segment, and then I go, I fast forward,
Yeah.
Every cut normally, unless it's like a close-up of someone building, like sometimes a 4-second clip can be 3 hours condensed.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Just because every second that makes up, I'm sure, part of the video is so precious because you don't want to have even just a few seconds that might be of something that doesn't directly contribute to your main idea, and it might also risk turning off some viewers. Even just a few seconds, I'm sure, would change that quickly. Now, I'm sure it'd be funny if you were to repurpose a cleanup segment, maybe for, let's say, a junk removal sort of in-video ad or something, if you want to do that and recycle it. But at the same time, that's probably an area where you might reconsider. Because I know that there's some videos where you've done some really wacky, really comical things like that. That Patreon at the first time I think it came up in one of those videos where
the Billy Mays thing?
Yeah, that one. That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Little ideas like that sometimes, even if they're not directly related, they're still quite fun because they're just little diversion breaks, I think, and probably also not very intrusive to being a whole subplot of their own. Because they're they come on, they're there for 20 to 30 seconds, several shots, several things going on, and then that's it, and then you're back to the rest of the main idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's just like, it's like a bottle B plot a lot of times. But it's not always as simple as that. If there's someone that's coming in that's a different character and they just like do their segment and then they're done, then I think that's different than an ad read. One contributes to the plot and one is just a diversion from it.
That's true.
So when you're doing diversions, keep them short and sweet. If they contribute, you can kind of make them a little bit longer, but you still have to make them interesting. But I call those segments breathers a lot of times, and you can have a bunch of different breathers in a video. A lot of times that's like a way for me to connect with the audience and put a little bit more flavor in there than just me saying, I built this, So I think that spices it up a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of times that's where a lot of the editing goes.
That's true, because they in themselves are also sequences. You want to make sure that they still kind of maintain that same energy as the rest of the video does. So they probably also have equal, if not even more, attention sometimes there too. But of
Right.
course, I know you don't want to, like you said, have too many of them to where they also then become overly distracting also, and then might leave a listener going, well, where's this video going? What's happening here? I'm just seeing all these diversions and things. These are kind of funny on themselves, but I'm not sure if this is supposed to be the shovel241 comedy hour or something, right? Like stuff like
If
that.
you go too far, and it's really easy to go too far, then you can risk losing the viewer because it's just like it's too off topic, and then it's like this isn't what I clicked on, you know?
Yeah. Balance is definitely key there. Oh, here's something then as well, kind of tying into that. How about, because I think going back to the concept of television shows, some will have some of them are sequential in that they will start somewhere and continue along. Some are just they'll start in an episode and finish, the whole thing resolves in that episode. What would your thoughts be on, I don't know if you've considered, and I don't think I've seen this happen, but having hooks from a video, or I guess cliffhangers, or whatever you want to call them, from one video into another video, as a means of trying to, I guess, garner some hype for another video. What do you think? Because I think though most of your videos have usually been where they will start and finish in the same video. No matter how many things are going on, they all sort of resolve in a sense at the end. Unless I'm mistaken, and I've completely missed a video, and you can totally blame me for that. But what are your thoughts, therefore, on
that's a good question.
cliffhangers? Yeah.
I think they're really good in TV shows, probably not in YouTube videos, just because you're kind of baiting the next episode, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
But that is making the assumption that the viewer's going to come back. We're like trying to produce that effect. And if you just open up with that in the next video, some random person that hadn't seen the previous episode is going to be totally lost. And if you just make that a premise for the video, then it can be not very approachable to everybody, right? So I try to make everything self-contained to where I can line out in a project and I can complete it, and people can see the entire process. When I cut it halfway a lot of times, then it's not very fulfilling and it's very confusing a lot of times. So I try my best to not feel entitled to the viewer's attention, and that's not just limited to my dedicated audience. That's like every viewer that's watching the video. I want to earn it every single time.
I see.
If I don't, then it's not a good video.
That's true. It'll be the direct way of an audience telling you, well, hey, I don't know if I like this particular element, rather than just hoping that they're going to just trying to just assume their trust in your videos and stuff. No, I think that's a good disposition, actually. And I think another thing too that ties into that is people that want to try to hype stuff that they're about to release. And I've noticed that, and this is something that I wonder as well. I mean, obviously, I think it depends on what you're working on and what you're doing. But sometimes, especially if you're on a long project and you're worried about retaining an audience or subscribers or whatnot, that you want to kind of check in with them every once in a while and maybe leak something that might be related to your next video or your next build or whatever that might be. But when would you say you've hit the line where you might potentially be overhyping something to where then when you release it, all of a sudden, there's nothing to be surprised about anymore, nothing to be excited about? Because I know sometimes it happens where people they do it for the sake of staying connected with their community, but little do they realize maybe it actually is they're getting shot in the foot once they get the video released or whatever it is, and find that they didn't get the reaction that they were looking for.
Well, I think that it kind of varies for every creator. When you're talking about promos, say like you're posting on the YouTube community tab or something, you're only going to be talking to your audience pretty much.
Right.
People who have seen your videos before, and that's different than if you were to like take out a billboard ad right? Because that's a lot of like people who have no idea who you are or what you're advertising. So I think that over promoting something, I guess it really just depends on your community. You don't want to just be like hyping yourself up. You can hype up the project, but I really don't do a lot of promotions for things. I try to clue people in as to what's going on so they know I'm not dead. And maybe I should be doing it more. But I think that making sure that you have something to say before you say it is a good rule of thumb when you're posting. Right? So I'm not going to just promote and post on the YouTube community tab for the sake of doing it and think that it's connecting with my audience, because eventually that's going to get watered down by how many times I post. It's not going to have the same effect, right? It's like, oh, it's another post by Shovel, and it's not the build, but it's something. I think that is an effect that I try to avoid. But I also try to deliver on every video. Like I don't put half effort into my videos, or I try my best not to. I want to make sure that every single video delivers on anything that I've hyped up, if not surpasses it.
Yeah, so it almost seems like you wouldn't worry too much about what happens in between video releases if maybe some followers or subscribers trail off, right? Yeah, so maybe it could be a mindset thing then by the sound of it, where it could be that as you release things and if your content is quite sound and you put your all into it and you get the impressions or the analytics show for it, then one wouldn't really have to worry too much about what happens in between, in a sense.
And I don't know if I'm really the best person to take advice for that, because I think that I'm a good video creator. I don't think that I'm a good content creator, because there's a difference. I think that my videos garner views, but I am not a very regular poster. I do not have a very solid upload schedule, and I think that is the mark of a good content creator, is being consistent and having a dedicated audience. A lot of times, a large majority of my views that I get on my videos are not from my dedicated audience, because I try to shoot for over 1 million views on every video, and I have less than 300,000 subscribers. So that to me tells me that I'm not just pitching to people who have subscribed to me, I'm pitching to everybody. So I swing for the fences when I'm making a video to make it viewed as readily by a random person than one who's just in my dedicated audience that's watched every video.
Yeah, I see.
My philosophy behind it is I would rather everything I post be meaningful, and maybe it's more infrequent, than posting too much and then just falling out of relevancy with my own dedicated audience.
Yeah. You know what I also forgot to mention, Shovel, is that a lot of the videos as well kind of, I think we'll move into an area where it comes to working with others, because I know when you first started with the first few videos, obviously I think you were already known to us and friends with us on the bakery, but it wasn't until I believe it was that same Achilles video where you started bringing members of the bakery, including myself, for that AI video. In fact, I think this biome we're sitting in, I completely forgot to even talk to you listening about this setting that we're sitting in. This is actually one of those biomes from that video, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep.
Fertile Valley, I think. I can imagine my AI voice mentioning this very thing as we speak right now, pretty much.
Yeah, whenever you chime in with a line from there, I'm just like, oh, I edited that.
The funny thing, too, is whenever I go into VCs and people will be wondering, is that a snippet? Is that a soundboard of Rainboom, or is that actually Rainboom? And sometimes I'll try to see how well I can replicate that. You know, like Noted was probably my favorite one, where it could very well pass off as a soundboard. Yet that was a fun video to put together too. But Yeah, with the bakery, I think, how do you think that's helped? I mean, alongside videos like this and all the other ones where now you've started to really incorporate more members from that community. But what impact would you say overall has it had on your videos, having all these extra hands or voices or other folks coming in?
Well, I mean, the bakery is a think tank, but it's also a friend group. And I don't know, people always talk about YouTube being, oh, such a lonely career and stuff. You're doing all of this on your own. And I think that that's why a lot of people get burnt out. But the bakery is just like a very consistent community that's been here since I started. And I don't really feel alone when I'm in the bakery. It doesn't even matter if we're working on a video together or anything. Just like having that, it's not like I'm just sitting in my room alone. And there's definitely a lot of people that I'm connected with, and I feel like I'm not just on an island by myself. So that has definitely improved my videos in the fact that like I don't get burnt out, so I can keep doing them. But also they've like just improved my building skill monumentally. It's just like being able to glean all of this technical building information and like adapting it to my own style and my own projects helps so much. Like I wouldn't be half the builder I am if I wasn't a part of the bakery, probably even less than half. So in terms of actual projects that they do on my builds, I think that like they just having more people who are, you know, expert builders on a project is always going to elevate it. So they think of things that I probably wouldn't have even thought of, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
That definitely happened with Vahan, and that always happens with Achilles on interiors and rail and everything. But also just like I always want to, I don't know, give them a spotlight as long as it makes sense for the video.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But like I always feel like they deserve that, regardless of how much or how little they did. And I try my best to hype them up, but it can sometimes be tough to integrate them into videos all the time. Like with this one that I'm doing, I had like have 6 collaborators or something like that. So like I want to make sure that one person doesn't get like overshined by another. But like it's hard when you've got like a ton of collaborators. But like I also want to include them because I want to grow as a builder, and I also think that they would be a good fit for the build, you know?
Yeah, so I guess there's just more balance to be had there overall, kind of and tying in with all the other elements that come in with making the video, right? And that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Putting it all together. Out of the things, now mentioning that there's a lot that you've picked up, is there anything that's maybe any kind of, whether it's a tool or a mod or something that's been a favorite of yours that you learned from, whether it was from a member of the bakery or us as a whole, that you've loved applying in your videos ever since you learned it?
Yeah, Archeon is a like awesome tool that I've always loved since I learned it years ago. But I've ranted and raved about that before. Davd actually turned me on to command keybind, which like I can just set macros for commands. That's been awesome because it turns it into a completely different engine essentially, to where I can just press a button and like something will move one block, and it increases my speed and also it's just, I don't know, it's fun to use. It turns building a lot more dynamic. It's almost like having like the Axiom editor, but like you just have it all keybinded instead of like having to go into an editor.
I'll have to try that one day, because I know there are a lot of times where I have to do some like little move commands or copies or stacks or things, and just having to do the same thing over. And I always find myself furiously typing the up key, trying to find the history of it in my a command history or something like that. So I'll have to give that a shot. That might be interesting, actually.
Yeah,
but
and don't ever take your hand off your mouse or your keyboard. Keep them right there. Learn how to program your macros to where you don't have to waste time
yes
typing.
Yeah, obviously, there's it's all about balancing it all, isn't it? Wow, there's a whole thing that comes right back to that. But okay, one last thing before we close here, Shovel. I mean, coming up
Sure.
ahead, what is something that you really would like to tackle or would like to do in a future video of yours, even if it isn't in the near future, it could be the distant future. And is there anything like one big ideal thing you'd love to try to do?
I'd like to do AI biomes too.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool.
That's something that would be on my radar. But if we're talking about like the map building stuff, or maybe even just a new idea, I haven't really thought about it. I've been so engrossed in this current project.
Mhm.
I don't know. What I really want to do is get the map finished and developed. But I don't know if I would turn that into a video. But I would love, if I didn't have to make videos and stuff, I would probably be learning how to like make mods and everything, just because like for some reason that just like lights up my brain, just learning stuff like that. I think that would be awesome.
Oh yeah.
But I don't have infinite time, unfortunately.
Maybe we need multiple shovel copies. Like you have to have parallel dimensions of
Yeah,
shovels.
I would love that. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, see, one will work on the story, one will work on the videos, one will maybe help you with other endeavors. It could be maybe you have one that runs a server that has all the worlds put together so people can kind of explore it in that and that sort of thing too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, I would love that.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen, unfortunately.
I mean, a server would be pretty cool, though, if you did put all your maps together and integrate them somehow so people could explore the whole land of Etheria, potentially.
Yeah, that's the whole goal. I would love to do that, and then I can retire and make the 1,000-player civilization, civilization videos.
Full build immersion, that's something that I always think about too, even for me, like with my city work, as a quick little interjection here. That and that's kind of why I guess I love Minecraft so much, because of how much you can immerse yourself into a world, especially if you've built it. In your case, I think they're all pretty much in player scale essentially, so you could just go roam around and enjoy the worlds as they are. I mean, for me, I built a little bit larger, but still just flying around and getting to see things as if I was putting myself in that place. It kind of makes you. There's a certain enjoyment to it, I think, that
That's
from
the whole goal.
within Minecraft just makes it so much fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I wanted to just like visualize the world and not explore it, I would probably just be doing it in Blender and not in Minecraft. But Minecraft kind of like makes it a little bit different, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing quite like it. It's like it just checks all the boxes off of everything you wanted to do with some kind of idea that you had in your mind. And even with the constraints that we may have with certain blocks we wish could have existed in game, I think it kind of adds to a little bit of that too, because you're kind of thinking of workarounds or other kinds of alternatives, or getting really creative with some blocks. We were talking about Vahan, and I'm sure Vahan knows this, but I'll never get over that pumpkin stem curve usage that she did.
So crazy.
That blew my mind pretty much. But anyways, no, Shovel, I mean, we're looking forward to the next video that you'll be releasing. I know I'm sure that me speaking on behalf of you listening also, will all be eagerly awaiting the next video coming out. So yeah, can't wait for that to happen. Yeah.
I can't wait for it to be out either.
Now, I hope that wasn't sarcastic in some ways or what, but...
It's just a big project.
That's fair.
Very stressful.
No, understandable.
But yeah, I can't wait to share this next build. I'm super happy with how it turned out. But, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we needn't say more. I think we'll wait till that video comes out. But once again, there's Shovel for you, and thanks so much. We finally did it, Shovel. We finally got it out.
Yes. Well, I mean, you still have to edit it and stuff.
That's true. And
all right,
sure
bye,
I'll
guys.
pull through.
Subscribe.